36 days after the shooting of Trayvon Martin. But they still don't know exactly what happened that night. But we do know George Zimmerman was handcuffed, brought to the police station, and then walked out a free man later that night. Why? Because State Attorney Norm Wolfinger refused to charge Zimmerman. Amid great public outrage, Wolfinger recused himself from the case, and Governor Rick Scott appointed Angela Corey to take over. Now Trayvon Martin's parents are demanding answers. Today, the family's attorney sent a formal request to the Justice Department to investigate an alleged meeting between Wolfinger and Police Chief Bill Lee on the night of the shooting. He says the two men overruled the homicide investigator's recommendation that Zimmerman be charged with manslaughter. In response, Wolfinger released his own statement today, saying he's, quote, outraged by the outright lies contained in that letter. Joining me now is managing editor of thegrio.com, Joy Ann Reed, and Ken Padowitz, a former homicide prosecutor. Thanks for joining me. Let me start with you, Joanne. Let's start with this letter Benjamin Crump, the attorney for Trayvon's family, sent to the Department of Justice. What was this meeting that he's referring to? Right.
So today, the attorneys for Trayvon Martin's family sent a letter to the Justice Department saying there are a number of things that they want the department to look into. They want to look into the actual investigation of this case by Sanford Police, what they did. They want to look into the reports that we've also had from an anonymous source that Wolfinger, the state attorney then assigned to the case, met in person with Bill Lee, the police chief in this case.
And you've had those sources as well as other media outlets.
Oh, absolutely, yes. There's our sourcing on that says that, and then, of course, I guess they have gotten into somewhere else sourcing as well.
Okay.
They also want it looked into, and this is the part in the letter that sort of raised my eyebrows, is that the family of George Zimmerman was at the police station at some point. Now, that could be as innocuous as who went and picked George Zimmerman up, but they have thrown all of that in, as well as the fact that the investigating officer, the only homicide detective who was a part of this, the others were patrol officers or some other specialty, didn't believe George Zimmerman but was overruled. So they want all that looked at.
Now, let me ask you, Ken, let's look at this without going into the weeds of what's in the letter or not. Is it unusual for Mr. Zimmerman, given the facts as we know it, to have walked out of that precinct, handcuffs taken off, never booked, never even given a mugshot, never charged?
Well, it's extremely unusual, Reverend Sharpton. That is not done. You cannot be unarrested in the state of Florida. And clearly, Mr. Zimmerman had been placed under arrest by officers at the scene. So somebody believed that there was probable cause to take him into custody. Probable cause is mentioned in the United States Constitution under the Fourth Amendment and in the Florida Constitution. It is not beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt, which is the standard at trial. It's a much lower standard. In fact, you can have probable cause that a law was violated in the state of Florida and still have some doubts as to whether or not the person actually committed the crime. But clearly, when he was taken into handcuffs and brought to the station, somebody believed he had probable cause, and when they released him without booking him in to the jail and filling out a probable cause affidavit, something is definitely unusual.
That's the question that I want to raise, because those of us that got involved in this early only got involved saying probable cause he should be arrested. No one is called for conviction. We don't even know what a charge would be. How can you convict someone without a charge? But how do you bring him in the precinct or the police station handcuffed? Somebody somewhere, I'm not getting into who shot the call one way or another, but somebody had to say, don't book him, don't photograph him. He was already handcuffed in the police station. Something had to happen, Ken.
No, something absolutely happened. I mean, here you have, from the facts on the ground, you have police officers who observe, and using their intelligence and reasonable minds, they made a determination to take him into custody, to arrest him. And that means, by definition, that they believed there was probable cause. You have Zimmerman, who is a member of the Neighborhood Watch, not a member of Neighborhood Shoot. and clearly you had a dead body, and they took him into custody based on all the evidence they had at the scene. To have somebody, and I'm speculating here, but to have somebody such as the police chief or even the state attorney step in and take away the discretion of the officers at the scene and say, release this man, that is very, very unusual. And I'm very happy to hear that the Justice Department is looking into this to find out what exactly happened, because something doesn't seem just.
Now, Joy, let me ask you, when you hear all of this, the mother of the young witness, 13-year-old witness, and I had her on the show, she said the lead investigator said to her that he thought it was not self-defense and thought it was stereotyping.
Yeah, and there are a lot of strange things in this case, right? The witnesses who weren't questioned versus those who were. And just the fact that, as you guys were just talking about, this person is brought into the station. They are either in custody or not. Police have said, well, he was in some sort of detention, right? Something short of being arrested. We don't know if there was a mugshot of him taken, fingerprints of him taken, but then leaks from the police department say that people are wrong when they say they didn't take the gun or the jacket. There was a leak to the Orlando Sentinel, ostensibly from the police, saying, oh, no, we did take these things into evidence. Well, if this person is free to go and they are not under arrest, why would any of that have been taken? He should have, right, in theory, been allowed to walk out with his jacket, with his gun, with everything. But police have pushed back on that and said that he wasn't. So the question is, was he arrested or not? Certain legal things kick in when you arrest someone.
Including a timeline.
Including a timeline in which you have a certain period of time in which to try this person, or it's moot. So the question of him being arrested is actually really important. And if he was arrested, then there should be a mugshot, there should be fingerprints, there should have been certain things done.
Now, Ken, and clearly the timeline is important, because if you run out of time, if they say that was an arrest, he couldn't be charged. But let me show you this tape, Ken, and you tell me whether this will have an impact on the Justice Department looking into it. This is the mother of the 13-year-old witness on this show. Now, as the investigators communicated with you and arranging and talking to you around the interview of your son, did they tell you whether they felt this was self-defense or not?
The lead investigator from the Sanford Police Department stood in my family room and told me this was absolutely not self-defense and they needed to prove it. He told me, and I'm paraphrasing this quote, but read between the lines, there's some stereotyping going on here.
Now, this lady sat on this show and said that, wouldn't that have some bearing on the Justice Department if they were to investigate what happened that night, that the lead investigator told this witness, who seems to have no axe to grind with anybody, that he did not believe it was self-defense, and in fact raised the point of stereotyping, which and I said to her, I would say is profiling.
Well, absolutely. That is a damning piece of testimonial evidence for a witness to come forward and say the homicide detective at the scene made those comments to her about the fact that self-defense was not an issue in his mind, and clearly indicating that he had probable cause to make an arrest. And that is what is so frustrating. Only people want in this instance is that justice be done. No one's talking about convictions. We're talking about an arrest and probable cause for an arrest. And justice is not being done here, and that's why people are so frustrated, because they can see that there's a problem with this situation.
Yeah, well, I think you said it best. All we've ever said was release the tapes, which we finally got, and probable cause for an arrest. No one but the right wing distorting us saying we want a conviction. We don't even know what a charge is. How can you call for conviction? But you can't accuse us of rushing to judgment unless you misquote what we're saying. Joanne Reed, thank you for your time. Ken Padowitz, thank you also, and stay with us. Ahead, new details about an ambulance call for Zimmerman the night of the shooting services. And coming up, Bill O'Reilly and Rush Limbaugh are distorting the effort to get justice in this case. We'll examine what they're saying. Stay with us.